BlackRock, these guys got the contract. Chase got the contract, $410 billion to rebuild
already
Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is the whole thing. I think people were, initially kind of, hoping for some type of peace agreement or negotiation. And I mean people meaning the citizens of the country, not BlackRock. But that has been discouraged at every turn by the U.S., unfortunately, right? Every time there looks like there's some opening, Tony Blair goes over from the U.K. or our State Department goes over.
Boris Johnson.
We seem to be, not Tony Blair, Boris Johnson, I apologize. We seem to be discouraging, and that can only mean to me that we have a beautiful project planned. A marina, townhouses, commercial real estate, like whatever BlackRock has cooked up, it's not nothing. It can't be nothing because we've avoided an end to this war at every stage. We've avoided it because we want, and also you got to remember the Ukraine, they call it the breadbasket of Europe, right? So a lot of farmland, a lot of grain. That's all been promised to U.S. corporations too, a lot of it.
It sounds like you're on the inside, this kind of stuff, and it's great to get it directly from folks who are dealing with these guys.
It's like getting stock tips from like Nancy Pelosi.
We got to be positive. We got to be positive about it. Too many people are negative about war. We got to be positive about war because at the end of the day, it's like it's
helps business, right?
It helps lots of things,
right?
And that's
what a way of looking at it.
It's always
I never thought about it that way. Why was I bitching while living in Iran? You know what? I was negative about it.
That's right.
It's a different perspective.
Pat, you're so negative on the bombings of Saddam Hussein in 1996.
Maybe that's why we needed Tim today to give us perspective on war.
Because think about it, the missiles, they got to build the missiles, the cars, the tanks, the uniforms, the bullets. Big business.
Still got work to do, man.
You got a lot. You got to wake up.
I mean, it's great to see these little, fledgling companies like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, and they get in bed with the Lockheed Martins of the world and the Boeings of the world, and they're building theme parks in Ukraine, Dillon World. It's going to be great.
I love it.
It's going to be interesting to see for sure.
By the way, did you see? This is slightly off topic. I wonder. Actually, now that you're saying this, what it's actually going to end up looking like. Did you see what China did to that one city that they made it look like Champs-Élysées and Paris? Have you never seen this? Put China turns a city into Paris. China turns a city into Paris. Okay, and just go to images, Rob. Matter of fact, that's the site, the one you went to. That's the site you went to. Click on that first one and check this out.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's in China.
So if you look at the city, go a little lower. Let's see. Yeah, that's not France, by the way.
No,
that's China. Okay, so that's exactly the replica they built in this city. Okay, and what is this city called, Rob? There's a name to this city.
Buckingham Palace they built as well over there?
China launched a $1 billion Paris dupe with Eiffel Tower and French architecture, and why it became a ghost town.
Yeah, well, these are one of their ghost cities or ghost towns that they built up, and we've seen what's going on with Evergrande.
Tianducheng, an easy name to pronounce. So Tianducheng even boasts Parisian walkways, cafes, parks, signage.
But the French are assholes, so he's probably like, listen, stay here, go to the Eiffel Tower. You don't got to deal with the French. Take the photos. Who gives a shit? Just tell your friends that you were there.
It didn't work. Though. We're going to see how it happens in Ukraine.
Well, they're going to do it. And we're just going to, we'll watch it happen.
Are you on the inside where you're thinking about like buying a penthouse there or something like that, like maybe for vacation?
I look all the time because I just love real estate. I think it's funny. And I love looking at it all over the world, right? I think it's great. And I do look at it in the Ukraine.
Think about it's like the perfect view of the border. Like you can actually report on what's going on, do podcasts with a backdrop.
Well, I look at it in the Ukraine. There are houses for sale right now in the Ukraine, obviously. And there's, you can get a realtor on the phone. You can talk to them. And, obviously there's a language barrier, but they will sell you a house. They will sell you a house there. That's the thing. And that's what's great about real estate agents. I mean, I've said nasty things about them. They're the scum of the earth and they're the worst people in the world. But they will sell you a home. They don't care. You will hear the sounds of fighting in the background. You'll hear bombs in the background. And
how do you overcome that objection? You've been in mortgages before, overcome that objection. So I ask you, you're a realtor. I say, but listen, I'm a little concerned. I have 4 kids.
Of course.
This bombing, our kids, 2-year-olds, not going to go to sleep. How do you overcome that?
Well, there's no denying, Mr. Bet David, this is a dynamic environment.
Right.
And we tend to think it's very exciting. And I think what you are going to find living here is that there's going to be a big influx of investment coming here from a lot of Western countries. And you are buying at the bottom. This is what you have to look at it as. This is a great investment. You are buying at, and then it will be a cover. And then but you are, technically that is the game there. They go, the U.S. and Russia are going to fight. It'll be a stalemate. Russia might give up. They might not care anymore. The U.S. is going to flood it with money. The Western countries will flood it with money, and then you're going to have an investment in maybe a NATO country. Who knows down the road? I don't think so. I tend to think that Russia is going to stick it out there. And we're going to give up. And I already think the Ukrainians are starting, they're all a little black-pilled now because the Ukrainians are actually starting to say, wait a minute, what happened? We thought America was going to be our partner for years and years and years and years. But, I think a lot of people are questioning, is the Ukraine going to be a permanent column in the Defense Department budget every single year? And what is the end game? And the domestic politics are shifting. And I think, Israel and Gaza now, this is a thing. I don't think, we're going to stick with them for the rest of the term. We are going to probably, I think this aid package is still stalled from my understanding.
In the House. It passed in the Senate.
You mean the border turned, basically, the hell with the border, just Ukraine, Ukraine.
The thing with
Do you think that's even going to pass? Any of the foreign aid? Any of it?
I don't know. I don't have the insight into whether it will or not. I do think that amongst people, the thing about being a comedian is you go around the country, meet all different people, you talk to a lot of different people. People don't understand what's going on, and they feel like they're not getting the full story. And when Kamala Harris goes, a bigger country has invaded a smaller country, and that's the way the vice president of the United States has chosen to frame this. She goes, Russia is a bigger country, and they invaded Ukraine, and that's a smaller country, and that's wrong. And she's explaining it like she would explain it to a 2 or a 3-year-old. Now, no matter what you think about the war, there's a tremendous context. There's a historic context. There's a relationship between Russia and Ukraine. There are things that have been going on there since 2014. There's been fighting there. There's been problems in their northern, in the Donbass region, in those areas. And, we've gotten very little information here other than the absolute right thing to do is to give Ukraine money, which I think initially everybody agreed with, let's help the Ukraine until we can find some resolution. And then, we started realizing that the resolution wasn't going to be the plan.
Tim, when you started off doing comedy and you were crushing it in New York and doing your podcast.
Stay in this topic.
No,
Are you going to stay in this topic or get off the topic?
No, I'm right here. Did you ever think that the word Donbass would be in your vernacular? As a comedian, the Donbass region.
I always love the world, and I find it interesting and fascinating, and I think it's funny. So I think it's very funny. So to me, it's very funny. I live in Beverly Hills. I live in an area where people are monsters, and they make valets cry when their cars aren't there, and they scream at nannies, and they terrorize their employees, and they're very vicious people. That's how they make all this money. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are very they're tough, okay? And you wouldn't think of them as humanitarians. That wouldn't be the first word that popped in your head when you think of Beverly Hills, right? These are, big movie producers. These are investors. They're CEOs or whatever. Almost overnight, these people, again, who I've seen throw a fit when their Porsche was not outside of Nobu Malibu in a split second. And overnight, they all decided that the one country they really, really felt bad for was the Ukraine. They didn't care necessarily about any of the problems in America. They rarely ever mentioned, any of these areas like Detroit or, upstate New York or, areas that had been, deindustrialized. People have lost jobs. There's a fentanyl crisis.
East Palestine going on.
Well, all of that stuff. No one cared about it. But overnight, everyone in Beverly Hills had a Ukrainian flag. And overnight, it was the accepted position of some of the worst people that I've ever met, that they had decided that the one cause that they were going to invest in a humanitarian way was Ukraine. And I thought that was very funny. That kind of made me laugh. It was very interesting. And then this idea that if you had any questions about it, if you said, well, wait, what, hold on, you were branded as like a Putin sympathizer or a Putin apologist. If you just wanted to know what was going on, you couldn't ask. So I just find all that stuff funny. I find the way that they do that pretty funny and pretty impressive, actually.
So we had Eric Prince on a couple days ago from Blackwater, who obviously the guy knows a lot about this stuff. This is David Sachs talking about what Eric Prince said. We need to bring that war to a close because all Ukraine is doing right now is destroying itself demographically. They're chewing up the next generation of manpower that they really can't replace right now. They don't have enough manpower. The Western defense base is pathetic, and you're not going to out-conventional war the Russian bear. An ugly peace is better than whatever their idea of an ideal war is. Freeze the lines, let them keep Crimea, Donetsk, all the other ones. It's not the American taxpayers' obligation to spend another $100 billion in Ukraine when there's been significant corruption, really nothing to show for it.
And by the way, it's not like Zelensky's not. They just found, $40 million was gone the other day. Another guy stole a couple other million. Zelensky's on interviews, geeked out on cocaine, because obviously he's getting the good cocaine now. What? It's like, what do you mean? There's a video of him just geeking out.
Zelensky's on cocaine now.
Okay. Adam, I know you don't believe anything.
No, I was genuinely asking.
I understand, but from the look of it, if you saw it, you'd look like.
But you're speculating too, though.
I'm speculating too.
We got that. That was on. It was on Vinny.com.
Is this the one?
True. Yeah.
Like he is just like, look at his mind. He's.
Do we have an audio here, Rob, or are we just looking for
ammunition.
the cocaine?
They don't have enough weapons to advance. They can only defend themselves. In some cases, they're losing territory.
But my point
happens to your country if this American aid doesn't
This was
arrive?
the face of every Bitcoin guy in Miami when it crashed.
Yes. So my point being that it's obviously corrupt. The money's getting stolen, but you nailed it too. It's like the BLM thing. If once BLM happened, if you weren't putting a black square, I had people like, what the hell is your problem? Mm-hmm. You're not going to support. I'm like, I'm not putting anything anywhere.
I have two Instagram posts on my Instagram right now. It's a black square and a Ukraine flag. That's it.
Yeah.
Well,
that's all I have.
Very loyal.
I just, it was one of those things that it happened immediately, and everybody was on the same page, and I was confused. Because I remember there were Vice documentaries about Ukraine and how it was a white supremacist gangs, these neo-Nazi gangs were in the Ukraine, and they were recruiting people in America, and it was like a huge issue, and there was all this corruption in Ukraine and a lot of like neo-Nazi stuff. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's just, that was odd. And then that kind of went away. Mm-hmm. And then it was just like, no, this is the, we're required as Americans to, essentially provide military support and money for, an unknowable amount of time.
And I'm personally funding the BLM movement in Ukraine. It's one black guy, but it's actually a Ukrainian guy that identifies as a black guy. So it's pretty cheap. I just give him one bullet a month, and
it is.
He's doing his thing.
I look at it and I say to myself, I go, it's fun. It is tragic. Like I thought when this whole thing happened, it was like, just cut a deal. You're from the business world. Make a deal. Make a deal. Just make a deal. Give him Donbass, give him Lugansk, and give him another thing. Give him a thing he didn't expect. That's fun. Give Putin one thing he didn't expect.
One little add-on. A dead puppy, maybe.
You give him a town he didn't. We do this at the closings all the time. We go, and here's $2,000 that we have this escrow account.
Very strategic.
We have $2,000 that you overpaid your tax. We'd always do this after we told him we were charging him $40,000. You know what I mean? We charge him $40,000 to do the loan, and then we look at him and go, and let me stop crying. Let me tell you, because you overpaid your taxes. Here's $2,000 you didn't know you had, and then all of a sudden they're wiping the tears away, and they go, this is kind of
what a noble guy
this is kind of nice,
right? Yeah.
And then I say the same thing with Putin. Give him something that he wasn't even expecting. give him a nice little town, and say, here are the two things you want, and we're throwing in a bonus for you, and end it.
Sweeten the deal.
Sweeten the deal.
Well, at the end of the day, they eventually have to spend money. The main question everyone's asking is if this is going to be like Iraq and we're going to be doing this for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years or not. I mean, obviously, that's one of the reasons. We can't
make any movies about this. No one speaks the language. No one cares.
Good point.
We can't do anything here. There's no cultural relevance. You have to think
relevance. Movie. You have to think.
Oh, my God. No. Not going to happen.
Not going to work.
Yeah. The one difference is, and I would pray and hope and being serious, we sent troops into Iraq. We sent troops into Afghanistan. We sent troops into Vietnam. No American boots on the ground.
Hold on, no,
keyword is not yet.
Covert, you don't know.
No, I'm saying as a policy from the United States. That is not what we're doing.
Let me ask you a question. So none of this, I'm not being the guy that's, it didn't happen under Trump. It didn't happen under Trump. I get that. But what was the moment where Putin was like, oh, shit, I'm going in? Like, what do you think was that?
I think it was, when Kamala Harris is saying things like, we want to admit Ukraine into NATO, and this is kind of the established position of the United States government, is that, there's all the ruling class, whatever you want to call them, that, people like Ann Applebaum, who writes in The Atlantic, who says that Russia is a failed state and we need to westernize Russia. I mean, people read these articles, right? The people that work at the State Department, Tony Blinken, Victoria Nuland, whoever these people are that are around Joe Biden advising him, they read this stuff and they go, Russia's a failed state. We need to go in there and westernize Russia. There is this idea that if we encircle Russia with NATO countries, it becomes an inevitability that Russia eventually, and again, this is something Hillary Clinton has talked about. This is not like a conspiracy theory out of nowhere thing. So whether you agree with Putin or not, his belief is that you're not going to put missiles in the Ukraine. You're not going to put NATO missiles in the Ukraine in the same way that we wouldn't let China put missiles in Mexico.
Right. So, well, that's been Putin's whole thing, is the encroachment of NATO and NATO. I assume you saw Tucker's interview with Putin and then the death of, what's our friend? Navalny, Alexei Navalny. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's anyone who dies, it's sad. You know what I mean? And he died of tuberculosis.
Of course.
In the Russian prison, which is a huge problem. Tuberculosis in Russia.
He stepped on a nail.
You know that.
Stepped on a nail.
This is actually a very big problem, right? Tuberculosis in Russian prisons. And my foundation does a lot of work to try to get rid of. No, I don't know. Here's the reality. I will tell you this right now. I don't know. Did the FSB get him? Could be. But I'll tell you this. I don't know why. This guy he's not a threat to Putin. He's already wasting away in an Arctic jail. He's already in a Siberian jail. He's not going to get out of jail and win an election. This isn't a movie. Yeah. And, everybody in America is like, Putin got rid of him because he was a threat. Well, listen, he was no threat.
Zero.
And he doesn't have a huge popular support in Russia, by the way. He doesn't. I mean, if you listen to Russian podcasts, people that it's not like state-controlled media. If you actually listen to people, some people liked him, some people respected him. Navalny was a hated, it was a big anti-Jew guy, anti-gay. He came out, he was kind of a fascist, if you want to call it that.
A man of his times.
And he came out, and him and his wife, who's a hero now, she loved him, they were all into that. And then he, magically, I don't know, at some point decided those views were not good. And he started espousing very Western kind of progressive views. I don't know. Now, I don't know how that happened. I don't know. But one day, this Alexei Navalny, who wrote some very controversial stuff that would not fly in today's, in today's sensibilities, turned and became a big critic of the Kremlin. And listen, there's a lot to criticize. There's corruption in the Kremlin, and there's corruption all over the place. And I'm obviously an American, rather live here. I like our corruption better. We're better at it.
We got the best corruption in the world.
We've got good corruption. Yeah. We're better at it. We know
crony capitalism.
We're a modern society. We've institutionalized corruption to a degree, whereas Russia's kind of an old world society. And they're still a little rough around the edges, right? That being said, I don't know why Putin goes and kills the guy now, when
during the summit, the Munich peace summit.
Maybe he does it to just get people talk. I don't.
You do some big interviews, which we'll talk about. RFK, I've seen you do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But if you were sent to Russia instead of Tucker Carlson, Tim Dillon had Putin on.
Yeah.
You wouldn't let him go on some history lesson.
Well,
when you would ask him tough questions, wouldn't you? What would you do with
ask
Putin?
him about the luxury and the Moscow and marble and hotels and
the life,
the Moscow supper clubs, and really what is the elite doing and where are they going and how is Sochi as a secondary?
What you actually want to know, though, the thing I like about you is your why are you so smart? Why do you know this stuff? Why are you interested in this stuff?
I don't think I'm so smart.
Why are you curious into this stuff?
I'm curious about it because I grew up and I remember I thought I was right about everything, and I thought I was right about the Iraq War. I thought I was right about all these things, right? And I remember being very fervently pro. Going into Iraq and Afghanistan, this guy that believed in that idea that we needed to intervene in these countries and change their governments and make them more democratic. This is what I believed. I was 20 years old and on cocaine, but it sounded good. It sounded great.
Everything sounds good.
Everything
all the
sounds
best,
good.
All the best ideas start with okay.
Drive to Vegas.
Yeah, everything was good. And then I think it was about being wrong and learning that you are being sold a version of something, no matter what you are, no matter what you are consuming, you're being sold a version of it. And I kind of realized that after the Iraq War and after I'd seen friends of mine go there and volunteer and sign up, and some of them, pass away. And, I saw the lives of veterans that came back. They weren't getting good health care. They weren't being adequately taken care of. I saw parts of America be completely ignored where, 10 counties around D.C. became the wealthiest in the country. Mm-hmm. And to me and a lot of people, it seemed like, we then started becoming appropriately skeptical of all these narratives that the government was telling us that we needed to do. Remember, after 9/11, it was essential. It was essential for our security that we needed to do certain things. It's the same argument that's often made. We've been in 25 wars in the past, 20 years, 30 years, right? How many of them can you name? How many of them were that important to any of us and our way of life? However, we're constantly being told that it's essential that we do these things. So I'm just curious, and I think a lot, and I try to laugh at stuff, so I think a lot of it is funny. I mean, they get away with a lot. The people that create these narratives get away with a lot, and I just think it's funny the way they do it. I don't have a tremendous amount of power to change what's happening. I just think it's funny to notice it and point it out.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.